Good morning. My name is Caterina Fregoli and I'm a master's student in finance at the University of Siena.
Hi, my name is Mariana Bruno, and as my colleague, I'm a master student in finance at the University of Siena. We decided to participate to two different webinars during the Eumol Winter School 2020, organized by Eumol Money Chair in EU Money Law and the University of Siena. In particular, with this video, we are going to give you an overview about the blockchain technology, and then we will go into details talking about stablecoins in cryptoeconomics.
Well, I start talking about the webinar held on the 19th of November by Mark Pilkington. He's an associate professor of economics at the University of Burgundy in France, and the title of the web seminar was Blockchain Technology, Principles and Applications, referred to a paper that he wrote 4 years ago about that topic. To present the blockchain, he selected as a starting point the double spending problem that is described by David Chaum as the difficulty of verifying the ownership of digital token. This because it represented the obstacle thanks to which an idea of electronic cash system was created in 2008 by Nakamoto. Nakamoto wrote that what is needed in electronic payment system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party. It was then introduced the problem of payment confirmation. In the traditional system, a payment is final because the bank that represents the third party is going to guarantee that payment. Instead, in the case of Bitcoin, we talk often about the trust cash protocol. That means that we don't need of a trusted third party. This represents a really revolutionary solution. Nakamoto provided the solution to the double spending problem. In fact, if someone attempts to spend the same Bitcoin twice by making two separate transactions with the same Bitcoin input in the same block, then the two transactions will never be confirmed on the network. Thus, essentially makes them invalid transactions and they become cancelled. The concept of blockchain is then very important because it has an impact on different fields and it even going to renew the discipline of economics. Then the bitcoins became the most famous application because they were the first functional example of that technology. So, going into detail, Professor Pilkington provided us the meaning of the description of the Bitcoin consensus mechanism. The consensus mechanism is called proof of work and is going to rest on hashing function and on cryptographic hashes. Regarding the first one, you have a long string of characters that can be letters or numbers that have to be condensed in a shorter string of characters by some mathematical relations. You have then to find the input by the output. The cryptographic hash is the proof that you have solved the problem that alone is not possible to solve. The first miner, that is the first participant who find the solution, is going to send this solution to the network server that is going to verify if the solution is correct. Once an economic agent has solved this mathematical puzzle, and he is the first, and once the solution has been checked, this miner is going to be rewarded, and the reward sent to him is in this case Bitcoin. This is the method to incentives the whole system. This is not the only kind of consensus mechanism. The other important one is the proof of stake that differs from the other because validating capacity depends on the stake in the network and also because validators collect transaction fees as a reward. An important element that characterizes this consensus mechanism is the high degree of safety. Hacker couldn't need to control simultaneously 51% of all cryptocurrency on the network, which is practically impossible, and therefore making 51% attacks impossible. I would like to better analyze that topic because I found it really interesting. I find really interesting the importance of an initial decentralization and the subsequent need of re-centralization of the system. And in particular, in the early year of Bitcoin, everybody with a personal computer could mine Bitcoin. Personal computer became insufficient to solve the cryptographic puzzle because each time there were the necessity of a more complicated computational power to solve it. This caused the creation of what we call mining pools. That is putting together different computers to solve the mathematical puzzle. At the same time, in order to operate, you will going to need a lot of electricity. So in a while, only people that have access to a cheap electricity will be able to mine Bitcoins effectively. Moreover, taking as example China, where there is a high concentration of mining pools thanks to the cheap electricity, we face a new problem. If the mining pool will be concentrated more and more, it means that is going to be reintroduced a kind of concentration power within the network, because this causes that the possibility of an attack becomes more and more realistic. Subsequently, Professor Pilkington underlined the fact that Bitcoins are public and decentralized ledger, and he gave us the definition of public and private ledger. The first one are accessible to every internet user and rest on a consensus mechanism of proof of work for validation purpose. In the private ledger, instead, write permissions are monitored by a central locus of decision making. Read permissions are either public or restricted. Then I tried to summarize with this slide the main principle of blockchain as a conclusive overview of this presentation. To conclude, due to my interest in that topic, at the end of the presentation I made a question to Professor Pilkington about the benefits and the problems of introducing blockchain as a payment system in the current situation of crisis. He asked me that blockchain is very useful for improving the management of healthcare related data, which require a lot of confidentiality or access information for doctors, especially for people who are traveling. For example, at the moment there are a lot of restrictions due to the COVID crisis, so this can be a moves away to manage this new transition and try to locate the competent specialist given geographical area who can provide quick and efficient care to a given person. Regarding the economic consequences, instead, he said that we cannot still give a sure answer, but he strongly believes in the power of innovation and of the transparency that the blockchain system has.
The topic that I find really interesting in the webinar of Professor Pilkington concerns the different applications of the blockchain technology. In particular, how the use of this technology makes possible to talk about self-sovereign identity that allows you to decide who can have access to information about yourself, and bank system allowing you to have very fast and reliable micropayment with your mobile phone and more efficient cross-border payments, since there are no more the necessity to pay a huge amount of transaction fees. Then I'm going to talk about the webinar held on the 20th of November by Marco Dell'Erba, Assistant Professor of Financial Market and Corporate Law at University of Zurich. The main topics discussed are initial coin offerings, also known as ICO, stablecoins, and shadow banking. ICO is a type of funding using cryptocurrencies. It is a revolutionary tool for entrepreneurial finance that facilitates and accelerates the critical phase of capital formation involving the sale of a stake in a project to raise funds at an early stage of development. It differs from crowdfunding for the speculative purpose. The phase before the launch is characterized by the announcement on cryptocurrency forums in order to present the project to investors, to provide a broader explanation of the ICO's mission, and to do a preliminary offer to select investors. The launch of the ICO and the collection of funds is characterized by just one round of fundraising, and generally the most successful ICOs finish their financing phase and collection of funds phase in less of 1 hour. We have a pre-ICO price arbitrarily determined and a post-ICO price based on the market supply and demand. Security token offerings and initial exchange offerings are trying to fill some of the gaps that are emerged in the context of traditional ICOs. On one end, security token offerings are trying to provide a more regulated framework for ICOs, and on the other hand, initial exchange offerings try to provide more certainty by relying on the reputation of these crypto exchanges to help both entrepreneurs and investors and provide some guarantees. But anyway, there are some problems, and among these, the main one is stability, because cryptocurrencies are extremely volatile. For this reason, we have stablecoins. These are stable cryptocurrencies that maintain a stable value against a target price, and they combine liquid collateral, such as gold or US dollars, with the management of the supply. The idea is to maintain stability with liquid collateral that, combined to the management of the supply, provide more or less quantity of stablecoins in order to make sure that the market will exchange these at a stable value. Stablecoins in cryptoeconomics are considered as medium of exchange because stability may cut off purely speculative actions and make cryptocurrencies a tool for increasing the certainty in the payments for those businesses that accept them. As unit of account, stablecoins may serve as a more reliable performance measurement to better analyze the intrinsic value of the project, separating it from the fluctuations of any cryptocurrency. As a store of value, stablecoins have hedging purposes over the long term and for the implementation of a systematic tokenization of real-world assets, since a stable reserve of liquid assets is helpful in covering fixed and variable costs. Starting from defining the shadow banking as a network of financial institutions and instruments that connect commercial and consumer borrowers to investors in capital markets, and defining central banks as monetary authorities with the aim of pushing stability, providing liquidity, and acting as lender of last resort, Professor Dell'Erba explained the role of technology in the transition from central banking to shadow central banking, thanks to e-money, that is an electronic store of monetary value on a technical device used for making payments, pre-Bitcoin digital currencies, Bitcoin, and stablecoins such as JPM coin settlement, instrument within JP Morgan for internal purposes, Libra coin issued by Facebook, and Ether hash graph by Google. Shadow central banking is a network of heterogeneous institutions adopting specific instruments disrupting both the public and private central banking activities, because they can provide money supply without relying on any entity, and because connect commercial and consumer individuals, since transactions and money are exchanged on a peer basis. Shadow central banking is characterized by increased transparency, financial inclusion, and structural disintermediation, and represents an invasion of activities performed by regulated institutions. But there are some problems related to accountability and independence, related to the real existence of reserves which stablecoins can rely on, and finally, shadow central banks are simple market infrastructure or may be elevated to the rank of central banks. Then my question was based on how it's possible to convince people to use stablecoins as a way to improve the current payment system. He answered with a very interesting example. He said that if two individuals with a very strong power are using a specific currency, they have the 50% chances power each to destroy this currency. The stability of a currency is achieved by a huge network that, using it, makes less risky that this currency would be volatile. The critical problem is to convince masses. Only if there is a vast enjoyment of people to use these systems, we can achieve stability, but it is really hard to convince them. What I found really interesting is the problem of interest related to the incentive of private entities to act as lender of last resort. Would I have interest to put some money of mine to save my competitors or the economy against failure? This is an open question, without an answer yet, and to which is very hard to arrive to any conclusion since it is something too subjective.
Well, instead, as far as I'm concerned, I found really interesting the webinar of Professor Dell'Erba. In particular, the topic that fascinated me the most concerned the mechanism and qualities of the CBDCs. And for this reason, I asked the professor the reason and the main uncertainties that have caused a lack of officiality of the CBDCs as a payment method. He answered me saying that the way in which central banks need to operate is to be extremely conscious and to make sure that what we are doing doesn't undermine the sustainability, the stability of the system. Central banks have to be extremely independent for maintaining the trust in the entire system, and for that reason are extremely important. These kind of problems, coupled with the problems of immaturity of blockchain technology, especially when applied to broad network, slow down the enthusiasm of central banks of these tools. So at this point we conclude and we have finished our presentation, and we thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.